Katie, I'd love to welcome you to the Women's Power Hour show. Really great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Really pleased to be here.
Well, listeners, Katie is the co-founder of Did Teach and the T.I.M.E platform. And Katie's going to be talking, or she's going to be sharing some of her own insights about her journey into running her own businesses. And we're also going to be talking about a lot around the teaching industry, but also about self-care as well and how that plays out. But I think let's kickstart, Katie, with a bit about you. So just tell us a bit about your journey. I know that you were a teacher. So how did that kind of materialize into running your own businesses? Share.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been teaching for 19 years and absolutely loving it, really loving teaching. And then there were a few changes that started happening in schools. So there were things like we had to have our pay cut and it's called TLRs. So we had those points cut from us for a bit just to save some money. And my husband's school, they started making compulsory redundancies. And then my school cut out middle managers. And I just started to think, well, where do teachers go when they have their job cut, but they're still passionate about education and still passionate about making a difference to young people or to the community? So really, that's how the business came about. We realized that there was no one saying this is the direction to go in. So we created Did Teach as a platform to really help those teachers who either they've done a bit of teaching and there's no room for them to evolve within the school or within the system, or those teachers who are just really ready for a new challenge. So that's how Did Teach came about.
Wow, okay. And tell us also a little bit about the T.I.M.E platform, because that's a separate business, if we like.
It is, yeah. So that was really lovely how that came about. I was doing some voluntary work for another company and I met Basit Siddiqui, who's on Gogglebox. And I had a quick chat with him about using him within our social media. And he was such a nice guy, a lovely chap. And he was also an IT teacher, which I hadn't realized. So we just got on really well and we just talked about what we wanted when we were teaching and what we felt we were missing out on a bit. And one of those things was sort of personal and professional development. So what we've done is we've created this T.I.M.E platform, which is going to save teachers time by just logging on and having like mini courses on lots and lots of different sections that they can handpick what they're interested in. And then it will link to the person who wrote that, which is a UK educator or a UK business that has all the passions of education at their heart, and they can connect with those people and learn more about it and read their books or do their courses or watch their videos or vlogs or blogs. So that's the idea with T.I.M.E, is about helping those teachers who are still in the system and just need a little bit of support.
Wonderful. So it's very teacher centric and it's amazing, isn't it? Because the education system has changed an awful lot. I am really keen to understand, because teaching has been seen as this kind of stable, long-term role. You know, kind of once you're in teaching, you don't kind of leave it. And perhaps for many, it still is that. What's the main reason that you hear from teachers who want to exit it or who are exiting it?
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be workload at the moment. And like you say, you go into it thinking you are set for life. That's it. You're going to be a teacher for your whole life. And I think that's the sort of ethos that goes with teachers, you know, what their passions and their values are, is about helping people and making a difference. And I think with the workload, some people are really struggling because they feel like that's taking over what they can actually give back to the classroom. And I think that's a real shame. And it's also taking over what they can give back to their family. So trying to balance those values with people, I think, is really important. Sometimes it can just be a change of school, sometimes a change of management within the school that they're currently at. Some people, it's about stepping a day off a week or a couple of days off a week. And for others, they just feel like they need to make a difference elsewhere.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, I hear that. So let's have a little break, Katie, and then we'll be back to continue the conversation. Well, we are back, and Katie is the co-founder of Did Teach, and she's been sharing a little bit about her journey from teaching into becoming a business owner, times two, because she's like that, and also just telling us a little bit about teachers and why some teachers are leaving the industry or looking for other roles beyond teaching, because everything is changing, as most of us will be aware. So just going back to your business, Katie, Did Teach. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the structure of it, how it works, and how you're helping teachers change their career paths?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's completely free for teachers to log on, to look at our website, to read some of the blogs and follow some of the journeys that other teachers have gone on. We have a targeted job board for teachers, and again, they can apply directly to that company. They don't need to pay a fee or anything like that to us, so completely free, which is really nice. These companies that we work with are all companies that really value teachers' skill sets, and they actively want teachers to fill those roles. So that's why it's a really nice step. Rather than just sending out to the general public, they can send it out particularly to teachers. We then have a mailing list where we email teachers each week with new opportunities. And we also have a business opportunities page, because lots of teachers have gone into setting up their own businesses, or they want to run a franchise. So we have all sorts of businesses that work with young people and adults in the education sector, and just really that's there to inspire these teachers to, if they want to run their own business, which they're very capable of doing, then that's a good step for them as well.
Fantastic. So you mentioned that there are these businesses who are specifically looking for or really interested in teachers. What are the skill sets that teachers are bringing to the table that are so valuable?
Oh my word, so many skill sets. It's incredible. And what's amazing is when I talk to teachers, they genuinely don't realize how amazing they are. And when you sort of break it down of how many students that they've worked with, or how many different bodies they've liaised with, like local agencies, governing bodies, different schools, head teachers, all sorts. Their communication skills, as we know, are fantastic, but also the ability to work to time, to also manage budgets as well, because they have to do that, analyzing data. All of these things are really important for the companies that are working outside of the school, as well as subject knowledge. We do get a lot of those that are looking for, in particular, certain types of teachers that are trained. So yeah, they have so many skills that they undersell all the time, but they are brilliant.
It's amazing, isn't it, that you say that, that all of these skill sets, and isn't it, it's so true, I think, across in many areas, that people build up this whole kind of list of skills and talents that they have, and when you actually sit down and ask them, what is it you're bringing to the table, it's almost like silence falls, because they're not quite sure how to kind of put that into words, or that they don't actually see that they're doing anything exceptional, and yet so many of them are.
It's very fast-paced teaching, and each year is just, you're on to the next, you're on to the next, you're on to the next. And to sit back and reflect on that and really work out, okay, say it's a GCSE group. What results did you get for that GCSE group? Where were they predicted, and where did you take them to? Where does that fit within the county? Where does that fit within the national average? And looking at that bigger picture, teachers don't do that. And actually, if they did, they would see how exceptional they are. So it's about sort of giving them the tools and opportunities to do that. We do that through our workshops as well, getting them to really unpick what they can achieve and what they have done and the impact of that. And businesses love this. They absolutely love it.
Gosh, I'm not surprised at all. Just out of interest, for those teachers that usually come to you, are they teachers who have had a long career, generally speaking, or are they actually perhaps some that are just new into teaching who just thought, absolutely not, this is not where I want to go for the long term?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixture, I'd say. I would say most of the people that come onto our workshops are around about their 30s, and they're just really sort of hungry for a new challenge. Perhaps they've just had kids of their own, and they're just sort of going through a transition period. And I think a lot of them realize that the amount of work that they could dedicate to teaching, perhaps they don't have as much anymore, because their sort of focus is elsewhere. And so they just want to bring something else to the table. We do get people that have been teaching maybe for about 8 years and realize that it's hard to climb up the ladder, or there aren't the opportunities because there's teachers that are not moving from those roles. They're staying there, staying put. So those teachers just want something else, so a bit more responsibility, I think.
Yeah.
And then we've got the end of the scale, which is teachers who want to retire, but they're not ready to sort of give up yet.
Down
so
the tools.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But mainly we get the sort of 30-year-olds, I'd say.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great. Okay, well, let's have another break, and when we come back, just want to talk a little bit more about the big changes in terms of education that you have seen, and we will also talk a little bit more about self-care, because teachers work extremely long days, so I'm really interested to have a view on that too. Now, we are back in the studio with Katie. Katie has been sharing with us a bit about her business, which is helping teachers kind of change the direction of their careers into other roles, or even starting their own businesses, as Katie herself has done, having spent 19 years teaching. Katie, I think you did touch on it a little bit earlier on, but what would you say have been the biggest changes that you've seen in the education system over 19 years?
Yeah, I think for me personally, because I'm a theatre studies teacher, I think the arts have suffered massively recently. And one of the reasons I was made redundant was because of that, because there just weren't the option blocks for children to pick creative arts. And quite often they have to pick between drama, music, and art and dance. And that's a real shame, because some of those children want to do all of those subjects. So I think that's been a real shame. I think as well, the fees for university obviously has a knock-on effect with the secondary school. That's been a big challenge, actually. I mean, I think the apprenticeship scheme, some of it is fantastic, really good for those young people, but it's just such a shame that people can't just go to university like they did normally without coming out with huge amounts of debt. And I don't know how they're going to survive. But that's been a big change that I've seen personally. In terms of what I can see the teachers saying who come on Did Teach, definitely that workload increasing. When I started 19 years ago, it was lovely. I mean, we did quite often, the school that I was at was quite progressive, and they gave us Friday afternoon off to do what we wanted. So if that was marking, or if it was to get together with some of the other teachers. So quite often we'd all join together and have a cup of tea and just have a chat and sort of have a bit more of community spirit. And then some schools I'm seeing now, academy chains and what have you, take away staff rooms. So they take away that opportunity for teachers to be able to talk and share and offload. And because of that, I think that, yeah, that is a big change, which is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of squeezes out the whole kind of social and the human connection part of it, which is hugely important, especially with the quantity of work that teachers do, that they have to put in. Having that social time is like just a necessity, right? I would have thought.
Absolutely. So one thing that was really important to me when I started as an NQT was being able to speak to different people from different departments and introduce some of their work and ideas into my lessons. So, for example, if I wanted to focus on a particular science element, I could speak to a science teacher in the corridor, informal chat. They'd give me the stuff that I needed and off I went. Whereas now it just seems to be sort of squeezed out, and they don't have time for that. And it would be a formal sit down meeting rather than sort of off the cuff. So I think that being able to spark off people is something that got squeezed out because of time constraints and the pressure of getting students through their exams. So also, some of the trips and activities. When I first started, I used to run so many trips. We used to do theatre in the streets. We used to do dance competitions. And then as the exams, and they're so important, I do realise that, but any time taken away from exams, the teachers got quite upset about. And some students felt the pressure that they couldn't then do a dance competition, or they couldn't then go to a middle school and help out in a primary school or middle school with some of their drama because they were missing a lesson. And I get that, but that was a shame. It lost that community feel.
That changes everything really in many ways, doesn't it, for the whole experience, both for the pupils and for the teachers. So when teachers come to you now, and I think a lot of people that I know in education have got into it because they are passionate about it. So how do they find that new role that allows them to still have all that passion and aligns with their values, the things that are important to them? How easy is it to do?
Yeah, and I think it can be really easy. I think if you just look at job specifications, that's the worst thing to do, is just to look through thousands of those. You can get really lost. So what I like to suggest to teachers to start with is to think about what their values are. What are their core values? And these are very unlikely to change. And then you can find companies that align with those values, and you're much more likely to be happy if you do that. And I've got a great example of a chemistry teacher who found a company she absolutely loved, but not the role that she really wanted. After 3 months, so she got the job, after 3 months, they gave her a pay rise. And after the next 3 months, they pulled her to one side and they said, your work ethic is so high. Where do you see yourself going in the company? She then explained her ideal role with a proper teacher PowerPoint presentation. And they gave it to her, and they gave her a team of people to lead. And that's the sort of power that teachers can have that they don't know, the influence that they can have. And that's just amazing. When I hear stories like that, I get goosebumps. Very easy to do. So sticking to your values is just massively important. Who are those companies that align with your values? Who are doing things that you're passionate about? Find those companies and contact them. They might have jobs, they might not. But again, you can stay in teaching, you can supply teach, and wait for these roles to come up.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I love that. What a fantastic story that is. I think that's absolutely brilliant. The power that a teacher holds. Excellent. Okay, let's have a little break and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about self-care and how that also plays out for teachers. Right, well, we are back with Katie, who has not only been showing us about her company, she's also shared a fantastic story about the power that teachers have when they put their minds to it. And really that leaving education doesn't mean leaving behind all the things they're passionate about, and that actually are just aligning with their core values is the way to go, and to really find joy, I think, joy and peace in life, right? Which is what we're all after. So one of the things that I'm really aware of, Katie, and I'm looking at this from the self-care perspective, is that teachers often work ridiculously long days. Now, I don't know if that changes when they go to work in these other companies and these other roles, but what impact does that have in terms of self-care? I mean, how did you cope in 19 years of finding time for self, for family, whilst doing an amazing job as a teacher?
Yeah, I think it was quite an eye-opener for me. When I first started teaching, sort of all my hobbies were sort of thrown in with the students. So if I wanted to go rock climbing, I would take the students rock climbing. And if I wanted to go surfing, I'd take the students surfing. And we even planned surfing holidays with a few teachers where we just took all the students to Cornwall. It was amazing. Obviously, that sort of got squeezed out. When I started the Rock Challenge, which was a charity dance. It was a national dance competition, and we were sort of in the southern heat down here in Dorset. That was great because then I could combine makeup, dance, costume design, hair design, but really with the hard-hitting story. So we looked at things like the Harvey Weinstein scandal, we looked at the Rwandan genocide, and that was great to sort of empower these students with stories that have happened from around the world, and getting them to express that through dance, but also understand, the impacts that can have on them now and choices that they can make. I guess I sort of shoehorned my hobbies into my teaching. But the time for family was really important. And I think when my redundancy came up and I had to really think about, just accepting this redundancy and leaving the profession, so upset. And it took, weeks and weeks of tears, and I still get a bit tearful now if I think about it. But actually, when I really did think about it and drill down, that the amount of time that I was spending at school and the clubs that I was sending my children to, so before school clubs, breakfast clubs, after school clubs, also I could run activities for other people's children for free, it just kind of hit home. And when I worked out that half my wage was actually going on childcare for my own children, that's when I sort of thought, you know what? I love teaching, but I can put those passions into something else. Stepping down is not that bad. I need to look after my own family. And I tell you what, it's been brilliant just having that breath of fresh air to be able to cook home cooked meals for my kids, walk them to school every day. And that's what teaching's missing. There is a company that are trying to help teachers with flexible working hours.
Yes.
But most of the time, teachers will know it's really difficult. A lady in another department that I worked with, she wanted to reduce her hours to look after her elderly father, and the school just said no. And so she just left teaching. And, you know, what a shame. She was a great teacher. She'd been teaching for 26 years and that was it. So, yeah, the flexibility within teaching is hard, and looking after your well-being, I think, is really hard, especially if you're in a senior leadership team.
Yeah. Wow. That's an awful lot of pressure. And you kind of sign up to give a lot of yourself anyway. We kind of know that kind of goes with the role. But you have got to be able to fill your cup. You've got to be able to have the inner energy and resources to be able to do that. And the very fact that it's almost set up so that you can't, no wonder that we end up with burnout, you know, and people leaving industries that they love. You know, it's actually just quite sad, really. But on the flip side of that, I guess they can always come to you now, Katie, and find other ways of being. So that's the upside.
Yeah, it is. I think one of the things that I found with a couple of people that have come on the workshops, and we look at their hobbies and interests, because actually you don't have to go into an education sector. Although my job board's all geared around education, you can go elsewhere. And when we talk about hobbies and interests, so many of them say, I used to do this, or I don't have time for that. And it's a real shame. But the fact that they've then made the decision to leave, you know, they will get those hobbies and interests back. It's not like they're done with it. So it is really hard, and they're pressed for time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also plays into that second business you have, the T.I.M.E platform, which will almost allow them to go back into exploring some of those things perhaps that they used to do, that they enjoyed. Because I think that, you know, it is all about balance. You know, whatever job we have, whatever work we have, we want to be able to do it and love it. However, we also need to be able to look after ourselves, our families, and all the other stuff. Right. Okay. Now, Katie, if we have got any of our listeners that perhaps are in education or have been and are looking for new pathways, you know, they want to take their skills and explore other avenues, how might they connect with you to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can visit the website, which is www.didteach.com. I'm also on Twitter at didteach1, and we have a Facebook page as well. But the website's the best place, and then they can email me from there. My phone number's on there if they want to chat about their options as well.
Fantastic. So for any of the teachers out there, you know, if you're, you know, and I'm not encouraging you to leave the education system, by the way, but I'm just saying, if you know you're at a space where you want to really explore different avenues, and maybe you are seriously thinking about leaving education, Katie is the go-to person. You need to get in touch, go to the website and see, you know, the great work that she's doing and how she may be able to help you. With that said, Katie, I want to thank you so much for coming in to the studio today. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It's been a real experience.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie.